amplifiers are the one which will amplify the incoming light signals directly in optical domain. Okay, so if you don't have an optical amplifier, how do we amplify still? How do we still amplify your light signal? So one has to convert the light energy into electrical energy. That is nothing but photon to electron conversion has to be done. Then amplification has to be done in electrical domain. That is what we call it as electrical amplification. Then after that we need to perform certain retiming and pulse shaping, after which the signal is converted back to photon, that is electrical to photon, electron to photon conversion. So these are the steps that a conventional optical communication system is going to use if one doesn't have any dedicated optical amplifier. Okay, so basically optical amplifier, or if you take any amplifier, it is used to amplify signal, but optical signal cannot be directly amplified by using the electrical amplifiers. Okay, so we need a dedicated amplifier, what we call it as optical amplifier. So without which these steps have to be repeated. Wherever the amplification has to happen, these steps like photon to electron conversion, electrical amplification, retiming, pulse shaping, and then back from electron to photon conversion. These steps or the process has to be repeated wherever we need to amplify the signal, optical signal. Okay, so this process becomes complex if you establish a huge optical network. This process, it's a complex, time consuming, and it's also expensive. So to overcome that, a lot of effort has been applied in designing and developing your optical amplifiers. We call it as all optical amplifiers because the signal, incoming light signal is directly amplified. That's the meaning of all optical amplifiers. Okay, so a lot of effort have been applied in order to develop and come up with dedicated optical amplifiers. Okay, and they are going to operate completely in optical domain, and the main purpose of this optical amplifier are to boost the power levels or the energy levels of multiple light wave signals, and they can operate over the spectral band of 30 nanometer and above. These optical amplifiers can operate uh, in a spectral band of 30 nanometers or above. Okay. So coming to kinds of optical amplifiers that we are going to study. So before we actually go into the types of optical amplifiers, we will be understanding the basic applications in which the optical amplifiers are being used. So where and all our optical amplifiers can be placed in an optical network. So that thing we will understand first. If you have gone through the concept or the working principle or the overview of WDM, that is wavelength division multiplexing, if you can recall that block diagram of WDM, so you can find we have placed optical amplifiers in between, near to the transmitter and near to the receiver. So all those amplifiers are going to be part of your application, right? So after that, types of optical amplifiers. So types of optical amplifiers, we have a broad classification as semiconductor optical amplifiers, that is the first category. Second category is doped fiber amplifiers, and third category is Raman amplifiers. And after that, we also have wideband amplifiers, that will be taken up later. Okay, so broadly, types of optical amplifiers are classified as SOA, DFA, and Raman amplifiers. Okay, so SOA and DFA are almost similar, but whereas Raman amplifier works in a different way, right? Raman amplifiers, it utilizes the scattering concept, and amplification is done through that scattering mechanism. Okay, that we will take up later. So first we will understand this SOA and DFA, right? And after that, we are supposed to go through the concepts like external pumping. These are the techniques that are being used in construction or during the process of optical amplification with respect to SOA and DFA, right? So we are going to study a popular amplifier called as EDFA, that is erbium doped fiber amplifier. Its energy band diagram and different architectures related to EDFA. So this is an important concept in this module. Uh, EDFA energy band diagram, erbium doped. EDFA stands for erbium doped fiber amplifier. So erbium is a rare earth material. That rare earth material is being used as a doping material to your optical amplifier. Okay. And the architecture, there are various or three kinds of architectures. They are also sometimes called as configurations, so don't get confused with architectures or configurations, both are same. In the exam they may ask, explain three possible configurations of EDFA or explain the three different architectures of EDFA, so both are similar, right? And power conversion efficiency related to EDFA. So these are the topics that comes under optical amplifiers. So first we will go through the basic applications of optical amplifiers, after which we will start understanding what is the meaning of SOA, that is semiconductor optical amplifier, where external pumping is required. Then after which we will understand the second type, that is doped fiber amplifier. Then we will take up Raman amplification as well as wideband amplifiers. Okay. And so coming to the basic applications of optical amplifiers, again, this is an important question that may be asked in the exam. Uh, Explain the basic applications of optical amplifiers for 4 to 5 months, right? So we have four applications. Yeah, the basic applications, it tells that where and all the optical amplifiers can be placed in an optical network or an optical communication system, in which places we can place optical amplifiers. So the place in which you place an optical amplifier, it defines what type of amplifier it is. Okay. So first one which we'll take up is inline optical amplifier. So you can see in the diagram, the inline optical amplifier is placed in between your transmitter and receiver. That is, uh, as the fiber length is extended towards say 100 or 1000 kilometer length, in between we need to use certain amplifiers in order to restore the signal strength. So in that case, inline amplifiers are being used. So in a single mode link, there is no possibility of dispersion that can happen, because we all know in a single mode fiber, uh, dispersion is minimum, but the single mode fiber is still being affected by other attenuations. Okay. Uh, an inline amplifier can be placed in order to compensate for the transmission loss that has occurred in between the entire channel, in order to compensate for the transmission loss because of the other attenuation factors, right? Like scattering, micro bending, and absorption. So these are some of the attenuation losses. To overcome all those attenuation or transmission loss, we need to place inline amplifier in between the channel or in between the optical links, so that uh, the signal can be restored. And please go through this statement. An inline amplifier can be used to compensate for the transmission loss and increase the distance between the regenerative repeaters. So we have to place repeaters, regenerative repeaters. They are going to regenerate the signal. Okay, so because the signal, as it travels longer distances, the signals are prone to error or noise. Okay, because of noise they are prone to errors. So in order to overcome that, we need to place regenerative repeaters, say for every 50 to 100 kilometers. Based on the design, we have to fix that regenerative repeaters. Ideally speaking, for every 50 to 60 kilometers we can place one repeaters. Okay, so if you can place an inline amplifier, we can compensate the transmission loss due to absorption, scattering, and bending. Along with that, we can also increase the distance between the regenerative repeaters. Okay, so please remember this. We can also increase the distance between regenerative repeaters. So that means to say, as I was mentioning, we need to place 50 to regenerative repeater for every 50 kilometer, assume. Okay, so if you can have an inline amplifier in place, we can increase that distance of placing the repeaters for every 50 kilometer to extend it to say for every 70 kilometers. So thereby we have increased the distance of placing the regenerative repeaters for every 70 kilometers. That means the distance has been increased to 20 kilometers. So without inline amplifier, the regenerative repeaters should be placed for every 50 kilometer distance. With inline amplifier, the regenerative repeaters can be placed for every 70 kilometer distance. So thereby we are increasing the distance of placing the regenerative repeaters. Okay, that's the advantage of using an inline amplifier. So coming to the next type of amplifier application, that is preamplifier, which is placed very close to your optical receiver. Okay, so this preamplifier can work as a front-end amplifier for your optical receiver. Thereby, a weak optical signal, which is nearer to the receiver, can be amplified before the photo detection process happens. So, before a photo detection process happens, that means the conversion of light to electrical energy or electric signal. The signal, optical signal, will be weak because it has traveled, say, thousands of kilometer distance. So in order to enhance the signal strength, very close to the receiver, we are going to place this preamplifier so that the weak signal can be amplified and the energy of that signal can be restored and before the photo detection happens. And if we do that, the signal to noise ratio degradation can be suppressed or avoided. Okay, so that's the usefulness of placing a preamplifier very close to the photo detector, which can enhance the signal strength along with the SNR degradation can be suppressed, right? So that's the second kind of amplifier, preamplifier. Third category is power amplifier. So power amplifier is placed very close to your transmitter. Power amplifier is also called as a booster amplifiers, uh, which can be used in order to increase the transmission distance by 10 to 100 kilometers. So similar to what we have understood with respect to inline amplifier, where the regenerative repeater distance can be extended by placing an inline amplifier. This power amplifier or a booster amplifier is going to serve the purpose by increasing the transmission distance by 10 to 100 kilometers. Say, if you want to establish optical link for say 500 kilometer. Okay, so if you want to establish a link for 500 kilometer and later on if you want to extend the distance, you cannot extend the distance without placing a power amplifier, because uh, whatever the link that you have established for say 500 kilometer, so that link establishment has already been taken place, and further extension of the distance cannot happen with the same resources. So in order to extend your distance from 500 to say 600 or 700 kilometer distance, we need to have a power or a booster amplifier at the transmitter side so that it can extend the transmission distance by say 100 kilometers. So then we can extend the optical link establishment to 600 kilometers. Okay. So you can just go through this example using this boosting technique along with an optical preamplifier. So along with this power amplifier and preamplifier, at the preamplifier, as we discussed, it should be used at the receiver end. One can enable the repeaterless undersea transmission distance of 200 to 250 kilometer. Okay. So in undersea transmission, it's very difficult for us or for any operator to operate the optical channel under sea. Okay, so in that is a challenge. So in that case, if you can use a combination of power amplifier and preamplifier, power amplifier usually at the transmitter end, which can extend the distance by 100 kilometers, and preamplifier at the receiver end, which enables us the repeaterless undersea transmission distances of say 200 to 250 kilometers. So that's the application of power amplifier, which is used close to the transmitter, right? Next, we can also use the optical amplifier in local area networks. Optical amplifier can be employed in local area networks as a booster amplifier in order to compensate the coupler loss and insertion loss, and also power splitting loss. So, uh, if you want to establish a local area network, this is the diagram. LAN booster amplifier. So this amplifier is going to act like a LAN booster amplifier, where you can see we have a star coupler here. Star coupler or any coupler, if we can take, it is a passive device. In order to insert a coupler in an optical channel or an optical link, we need to uh, cut down the fiber at that point, we need to do some splicing and we need to place the coupler. So all those process, after doing all those process, this coupler is going to insert certain loss, and we have studied different types of loss that is inserted by a bidirectional coupler in module 2 itself. Okay, so splitting loss, insertion loss, crosstalk, all those kinds of losses we have studied. So those losses can be overcome if you can use an amplifier before you place a passive device such as star coupler in order to establish your local area network, right? So we can see this is a star coupler. The output of LAN booster amplifier is given as an input to the star coupler. Okay, okay. So that the signal strength is already enhanced here. You can see the amplitude of the signal strength here. This is the original signal strength. Once it comes out of the optical source at the transmitter side, after it travels a span of certain distance, the signal strength is so much, and the signal strength can be enhanced by placing an amplifier, LAN booster amplifier, before this signal starts interacting with the optical coupler, star coupler. Okay, so please, you can just go through the amplitude or the signal levels before and after the amplifiers. You can see this is at the transmitter side, which exits out of the optical source immediately after the signal is generated. After a certain span of fiber length, this will be the strength of the signal. Once it encounters this optical amplifier, the signal strength is being enhanced. Okay. So everywhere you can see the signal strength is being enhanced once it exits out of the optical amplifier. So that's the basic principle in which optical amplifier operates. It is going to enhance the signal strength. That is the main purpose of using any amplifier, right? So having been gone through this applications of optical amplifiers, so now we need to understand the working principle and the construction of these amplifier types. So we will take up SOA and DFA. Later on, we will understand what is a Raman amplifier and how it works. So SOA stands for semiconductor optical amplifier, and DFA stands for doped fiber amplifier, right? And doped fiber amplifier can also be called as active fiber amplifier. Okay. So there are two names for doped fiber amplifier. In the second category, it can be called as a doped fiber amplifier, or it can also be called as active fiber amplifier. So all the optical amplifiers will increase the power level of the incident light through stimulated emission process. So this is the mechanism in which the optical amplification happens inside an optical amplifier, which is purely an optical device, optical active device. So the mechanism which initiates the signal strength enhancement is the stimulated emission process. Okay, or it's also called as an optical power transfer process. So we will understand all these concepts in detail. SOA and DFA work on the same principle as that of the laser diodes. Okay, since we have not gone through the construction and actual working of the laser diode, just to brief out, uh, laser diodes are uh, they are semiconductor devices where we will be using the semiconductor materials, and you can just go through this diagram. This diagram almost resembles the block diagram of your laser diode construction. That is an optical source construction. The only thing which is missing here is the feedback mechanism. Okay, so you can see we have an optical input signal here. This is the construction. I mean, this is the diagram for your semiconductor optical amplifier. You can see the active medium. Active medium resembles a lasing cavity in laser. So active medium resembles a lasing cavity in laser, and that lasing cavity will start producing your optical signal, and there is a feedback mechanism at the output of the optical source towards the input. So that feedback mechanism will help the optical laser source, that is the optical source, in producing highly coherent light signal. Okay, but that feedback mechanism is not present in optical amplifiers. Okay, So SOA and DFA, they work on the same principle as that of laser diodes, where there is a mechanism of creating population inversion, and this population inversion is very much required in order to initiate the stimulated emission process. Okay, so as we have gone through the previous statement, stimulated emission process is the one which will enhance the signal strength. How to have that stimulated emission process? In order to have that stimulated emission process, we need to create population inversion. So one has to create population inversion, and that population inversion will cause the stimulated emission process. Okay, you can go through this last statement. The difference between optical amplifiers with that of laser diode is that optical amplifier does not have an optical feedback mechanism that is necessary for the lasing action to take place. In case of a laser source, there is a lasing action which will happen, and that lasing action is the one which will generate the coherent output from the laser source. And that feedback mechanism is not required here in optical amplifiers, because we are we are not interested in producing a highly coherent output from an optical amplifier, but our interest here is to enhance the signal strength, enhance the energy of the light signal. So in that case, feedback mechanism is not required. Okay? That is what the statement which tells here. Optical amplifier can boost the incoming signal levels, but it cannot generate highly coherent output itself. Okay. So please understand this operation of a generic optical amplifiers. This is particularly for SOA. You can see the incoming optical signal that is coupled to an active medium through a fiber couplers. You can see we have a fiber to amplifier couplers. So this active medium will act like an amplifier, right? Once the optical input signal is coupled to this active medium through a fiber coupler, so through an external pumping source, the stimulated emission process will occur inside the active medium. Before the stimulated emission process, the population inversion has to be created. So that is being created with the help of a pump source. Pump source is the one which will uh, excite the charge carriers from the ground energy level to the excited state. Okay, so how do we create population inversion? The electrons from the ground level has to be uh, excited to the higher energy state. That is the and the density of the charge carriers in the ground state must be less than the density of the charge carriers in the excited state. Or in other way, the charge carrier should be more in number in excited state. That is, the population of the charge carrier should be more in number in the excited state than in the ground state. That is the meaning of population inversion. So once that population inversion is created, the stimulated emission process can be initiated. So that stimulated emission process will happen inside the active medium, out of after which the output signal coming out of the active medium will have a enhanced signal strength. Okay, so this is the enhanced signal strength. You can see, you can just compare the amplitudes of the input optical signal and amplified optical output signal. Okay, and we are going to use couplers even at the output side in order to couple this amplified output to the next stage, right? So pump source is the one which will supply additional energy to excite the charge carriers from the ground state to the excited state. So now we will go to understanding the physics of how this population inversion, stimulated emission, and there are different mechanisms like absorption uh, can be initiated. Okay, so most of you have studied all these things. It's like recalling the concepts of how this process will happen. I think you have understood the concept of laser diode because you studied this in physics. The same lasing concept is being used in optical amplifier. That's the reason why we are supposed to recall these concepts, right? So the lasing action is a result of three key process. The first process is photon absorption. Okay, photon absorption means we can see the charge carrier or let us assume it is an electron or yeah, we can take it as an electron here. So you can have energy level E1 and energy level E2. So those charge carriers which are in E1, they are called as ground energy level. I mean, the charge carriers in the ground state. And those charge carriers in the E2, energy level E2, they are called as charge carriers that are existing in the excited state. Okay. So for simplicity, this may not be the actual energy level diagram, but for simplicity, in order to understand the mechanisms like absorption, emission, and population inversion, we have considered only two energy levels, E1 and E2. Okay. So absorption is the mechanism which the charge carrier in the ground state will absorb an energy of photon energy of h nu. Because it absorbs an energy of h nu, it start itself reaching the excited state. So charge carrier in the ground state is excited to the energy level E2 upon absorbing the photon of energy h nu. The energy of h nu is equivalent to the difference in the energy level between E2 and E1. All these things, I think it's recalling of whatever you have already studied, right? So that is absorption, absorbing an energy and reaching it to excited status. What is spontaneous emission? That is the second step. Already assume that the charge is already in the excited state. That charge carrier will come back to the ground state on its own without any external energy. So those charge carriers which are already in the excited energy level E2 will come back to the ground energy level E1 without any additional energy. So those and after they reach back to the ground level, they will start releasing an energy of energy h nu. So this process is called as spontaneous emission, where we will not have any control over this spontaneous emission, and this spontaneous emission will not uh, uh, create any amplification in your optical signal. Instead, it will create a noise or a disturbance in the optical signal. So spontaneous emission is not advisable because it is an uncontrolled phenomenon which happens where the charge carriers without absorbing any energy will come back from the excited state to the ground state, thereby releasing a energy of h nu. This energy is a noise energy, but it is not the signal energy which is being released by the charge carrier. So spontaneous emission is an uncontrolled process which is not going to amplify any of the light signals, and it should be avoided, right? Coming to the third category, that is stimulated emission process. Uh, Stimulated emission process, assume that the charge carrier has already absorbed a photon of energy h nu, it has reached the excited state. So the charge carrier in the excited state will come back to ground state. Excited state is E2, ground state is E1. The charge carrier which is in the excited state will come back to the ground state upon the incident photon, upon absorbing the energy from the incident photon. So please compare this concept of stimulated emission with spontaneous emission. In stimulated emission, the charge carrier in the excited state will absorb an energy from the incident photon of h nu, thereby coming back to the ground state. After it comes back to the ground state, it will release its own energy. Sorry, it will release its own photon of energy h nu again, and you can see the incident photon and the emitted photon are in phase. So if the incident photons and the emitted photons are in phase, that is the meaning of stimulated emission process, which will result in amplification. Because you can see here, you have an energy, I mean, charge carrier in the excited state. It has absorbed a certain energy from the incident photon, and it is coming back to the ground state, and it is releasing the energy after it comes back to the ground state. So the emitted photon and the incident photons will be in phase, and this is the concept in which the amplification will happen in an optical amplifier. Okay. Yes, guys, are you all following or what? One of you speak out. Are you able to follow whatever I'm explaining?
Yes, sir, we are able to follow, sir.
Others,
Yes, sir.
except Krishna, others speak out, no? Pallavi K is there online? Pallavi K is there online?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you able to follow?
Yes, sir.
Virinchi is there online? Virinchi? Sai Virinchi, are you online? Yes, okay. Okay, I'll be continuing. Right. Uh, so these are the three key process which creates a lasing action in a laser diode, because optical amplifier is also based on the lasing properties. We have to understand this, or we have to recall this concepts of absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission, right? Uh, Population inversion in the sense, you need to have more number of charge carriers in the energy level E2, so that more charge carriers will be triggered to come back to the ground state by the incident photon. So more number of carriers in the excited state will be triggered, so that they will come back to the ground state and they will release the energy of their own. That is what we call it as emitted photon. And whatever the incident photon and the emitted photon we have, they are in phase. Whereas in spontaneous emission, it's an uncontrolled process where the charge carriers by itself will start coming back to the ground state, thereby releasing an energy. That is a noise energy, it is not a signal energy, right? So at thermal equilibrium, the density of the excited electrons is very small. So obviously this is the case where you have energy level E1 and E2. E1 is the ground state. Most of the charge carriers will be in the ground state in the thermal equilibrium, or the density of the density of the electrons or the charge carriers will be more in the ground state than in the excited state. Okay. So most photons incident on the system will therefore be absorbed, so that the stimulated emission is essentially negligible. Okay. So stimulated emission process is, it is not going to happen. Its stimulated emission process is not going to happen unless the population inversion is being created. So one has to understand that unless the population inversion is being created, the stimulated emission process cannot happen. It is generally or essentially it is negligible at thermal equilibrium, because stimulated emission requires population inversion. I mean to say, more number of charge carriers should be already present in the excited state. So that cannot happen in the thermal equilibrium, because at thermal equilibrium, more number of electrons are in the ground state E1, and less number of electrons or negligible electrons are only negligible electrons are present in the excited state. So in that case, the population of the electrons in the ground state will be more compared to the population of electrons in the excited state. So stimulated emission is the one which requires more charge carriers in the excited state. So that cannot happen in the thermal equilibrium. So more photons which are incident on the system will therefore be absorbed. Means initially, when you start applying the signal to your optical amplifier, it will take some time to establish the absorption, because more charge carriers or electrons in the ground state, they will start absorbing most of the photons, and they will start uh, jumping themselves from energy level E1 to E2. So that is the reason why initially speaking at thermal equilibrium, stimulated emission process is negligible. So after which, as more and more electrons will start exciting to the energy level E2, thereby absorbing the photons through absorption process. So now we have reached a state, assume that the number of charge carriers are more in excited state E2, and less number of charge carriers in the ground state E1. So stimulated emission process will exceed the absorption only if the population of the excited state, charge population of the charge carriers in the excited state is greater than that of the ground state. So please understand this statement. Stimulated emission process will only initiate, or it will exceed the absorption only if the population of excited states is greater than that of the ground state. So this absorption mechanism will continue to happen until the number of charge carriers in the excited states are more compared to the charge carriers in the ground state. Till that point, the absorption mechanism will continue to happen. So by the time the number of charge carriers in the excited state will be greater than that in the ground state, stimulated emission process will start, it will be starting there onwards. Okay, so this condition is known as population inversion, where the number of charge carriers in the excited state will be more compared to that in the ground state. And how do we achieve this population inversion? It can be achieved by various pumping techniques. So as I was mentioning in this diagram, block diagram, we require an external pumping source in order to uh, pump the electrons, sorry, pump the photons into the active medium, where these photons are used to create the population inversion, because the charge carriers in the ground state will be absorbing these photons generated by the pump source, thereby exciting themselves to the higher energy level. Okay, so that is the mechanism in which the population inversion is being created. A pumping source is going to pump the photons. Please don't get confused with the input photon, sorry, signal photon and the pump photon. So signal photon is nothing but the photon which contributes the information signal, whereas the pump photon is only used to pump the charge carriers in the ground state to the excited states in an active medium. Okay, so they are not pump photons are not going to contribute to the signal part of your optical amplification. They are only used to excite the charge carriers from the ground state to the excited state. Okay, so that is an external pumping source which is being used to create the population inversion process, right? So just to have an introduction to Raman amplifier before we understand the external pumping and all related to doped fiber and semiconductor optical amplifiers, just to have a brief introduction to Raman amplification. In Raman amplifier, there is a transfer of optical power from high power pump wavelength, and the wavelength which is specified here is 1480 nanometer. So high power pump wavelength photons are being used to pump in order being used in order to excite, I mean, in order to energize the information signals for at longer wavelengths. So in Raman amplifier, as we have gone through in the scattering process, stimulated Raman scattering, SRS. There we came to know that this Raman scattering will happen at high optical power levels. Even here in Raman amplifier, which adopts the method of that Raman scattering process at high wavelength, say at 1480 nanometer, and the information signals are being charged or they are being enhanced in the signal strength at high or longer wavelengths. Okay, that is one of the differences between your SOA DFA, that is doped fiber amplifier, and semiconductor optical amplifiers, compared with Raman amplifier. Okay. So Raman amplification mechanism is done without the need of population inversion process. So this is the second difference one has to note down. Raman amplification, it doesn't require the population inversion mechanism in order to amplify the signals. Okay, so but population inversion is very much needed with respect to your doped fiber amplifier and semiconductor optical amplifiers. Okay, so SOA and DFA will require population inversion, whereas Raman amplifier works with a different mechanism at longer wavelength. So it is not going to be used in Raman amplification. The population inversion cannot be used, or it cannot be created in Raman amplification process. So coming to the external pumping. So as I was mentioning this block diagram, so we need to have a pump source. This pump source will act like an external pumping. Means we are supposed to supply the photons externally into the active medium to excite the electrons to reach themselves from the ground state to the excited state. So that is the meaning of external pumping. From outside, we will start supplying the photons to the pump source. Those photons are being absorbed by the charge carriers or the electrons in the ground state in the active medium, and they will start excite themselves into the higher energy states. Okay. So you have a derivation here, which relates how the external pumping can happen with respect to the current density and all. So let me start with this derivation of external pumping. So it will take time for people to understand this derivation. So just follow whatever I say so that you can have some inputs before you actually go with this derivation. Okay. Yes, an external current injection is the pumping method which is used to create the population inversion that is needed to have the gain mechanism in semiconductor optical amplifier. Okay. So just to have a difference between the SOA and DFA at the initial stage, because we are going to understand the dope fiber amplifier with respect to erbium doped, that is EDF amplifier. So we are going to study in detail of how the EDF amplifier works and its conversion mechanisms and its conversion mechanisms. 5 ನಿಮಿಷ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. Just a minute, I'll come back. ಅದೇ ಅದು ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತೆಗೆದಿಟ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಅದೇ ಫೋಲ್ಡರ್ ಬೇಡ, ಟೂಲ್ಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡಿ, ಒಂದೊಂದೇ ಫೈಲ್ ಟೂಲ್ಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯಾರು ನಮ್ದು ಲ್ಯಾಬ್ ಇದೆ ಇವಾಗ, ಲ್ಯಾಬ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಓಡಿಸಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಲ್ಯಾಬ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ 8:30 11:30 ತನಕ. ಸರಿ ಸರಿ ನಾನು ಎಸ್ ಸಾರಿ ಟು ಇಂಟರಪ್ಟ್. So let me recall the difference between dope fiber amplifier and SOA at the initial stages. For SOA, that is semiconductor optical amplifier, we need an external pumping. Whereas in doped fiber amplifier, we don't require this external pumping, but the population inversion still has to happen in doped fiber amplifier. Okay. So in order to create a gain mechanism in SOA, we require this external current injection or the pumping technique. Whereas in doped fiber amplifier, the signal photons themselves are being used to pump the electrons from the ground state to the excited state. So that we will take up later when we start understanding EDFA, right? So that is one difference one can make out. SOA, it demands external pumping, whereas doped fiber amplifier doesn't require external pumping. But both SOA and DFA, they will work on the mechanism of population inversion. Okay. So external current injection is a pumping method which is used to create the population inversion in order to create the gain mechanism in semiconductor optical amplifiers. So the same thing will happen in case of laser diodes also. Okay. So we are going to understand this equation. In this equation, we have something called as the injection, the expression for the injection current, stimulated emission process, and spontaneous recombination rates. So we have three things. The sum of the injection means the current injection which is required to generate your pump photon, stimulated emission rate, spontaneous recombination rate. This three will give us the rate equation. This rate equation will govern the carrier density in the excited state. Means what is the number of charge carriers that are present in the excited state is decided by this term called as N of T. N of T represents the carrier density in the excited state. So we have a rate equation here. This rate equation is being governed with respect to three things. One is injection, stimulated emission, spontaneous recombination. Okay, so we have a partial differential expression here. Dou of N of T divided by dou T is equal to Rp of T minus Rst of T minus N of T divided by tau R. So this is a equation that is extracted from some other concept. So the starting point of the derivation, we need to start from here. Okay. So this expression on the right hand side, it has uh, some representation with respect to injection, that is Rp of t, with respect to stimulation emission rate, Rst of t. Okay, and spontaneous recombination rate is defined here as n of t divided by tau r. So what is Rp of t? It's what we call it as pumping rate. Rp of t is defined as pumping rate, which is related to your current density and the charge of the electron. Okay, so Rp of t is J of t divided by Qd. What is J? It is the current density. D is the thickness of the active medium. Tau r is the combined time constant, and Q is the charge of the electron. Okay. So what is RST of t? So Rp of t is the pumping rate. So RST of t is given by RST of t is equal to gamma A into Vg of n minus nth inside the bracket and outside nph, okay, which is equivalent to some small g Vg nph. So what is Vg? It is the group velocity of the incident light. Gamma is the optical confinement factor. Small a is the gain constant. Nth is the threshold carrier density. N suffix ts is the threshold carrier density. Don't get confused here with small n. It is not refractive index. Here n stands for, Nth stands for threshold carrier density. Capital NPH is the photon density. G is the overall gain per unit length. Okay. Small a is the gain constant. Small g is the overall gain per unit length. Okay. And NPH, we have an expression for NPH. This NPH is nothing but your photon density, as it is stated here. NPH is the photon density, and we need to take the dimension of the active region or active area into consideration in order to define this NPH. Active area of the optical amplifier as a width of W, thickness of D, and then for an optical signal of power Ps with photons of energy h nu, group velocity Vg, the photon density is now given by NPH is equal to PAS, the P of XS, PS of XS is the signal power or the incoming signal power, divided by group velocity into energy of the photon, multiplied that with the area of the active region. Area is defined by W into width into thickness. Okay, so this equation will define the photon density. Is that clear? So